How do you ensure quality control on your projects, especially when you have young professionals on your team? Or maybe you're a young professional trying to figure out what quality control is to you. I am your host, Brian Wagner, a licensed professional engineer. And in this episode of the Engineering Quality Control Podcast, I'll be talking with James Taylor, professional engineer and senior project manager, civil engineering group leader at Verdantas, an emerging environmental engineering and technical consulting company with a green, sustainability, and people-first approach in the foreground. We talk about things related to quality control for young professionals, how engineering managers can get them involved, get them asking questions, and we also talk about how valuable joining an association and getting involved and active with that organization can help your career as you get started. So let's jump right in. So now I'd like to welcome our guest for today, James Taylor from Verdantas. James, welcome to the Engineering Quality Control Podcast.
Hey, thanks, Brian. I appreciate you having me on, and definitely consider it to be an honor.
So we met back at NSPE Con, even though we did figure out that we actually worked together in different offices at one company at one time. But could you tell us a little bit about yourself and tell the audience what you may do on a daily basis?
Yeah, sure. So I University of Delaware graduate in 2012, degree in civil engineering. In 2018, I got my licensed professional engineer. So only took me 5 years to get that. So that's great. Not the normal 4, but that's okay. Currently, I serve as a senior project manager as well as our civil engineering group leader for our group here in Wilmington, Delaware, department in Verdantas. So about 22 people is who I oversee, doing an amount of land development, municipal work, a wide variety of civil engineering jobs and practices. And so I work with clients from both the private and the public sector on their engineering needs, really trying to be more of a consultant than just an engineer in pretty much everything that they do that they might need us for. So that's what I do on a daily basis.
Right. So, I mean, you're in land development like I am, so it's a little bit of everything. And it doesn't really fit into one of those 5 categories that we get tested on.
No,
But it's a great part of civil engineering, I think.
you're correct. Yeah, I took my PE test in transportation because that's just what I had, enough knowledge in. And you're right, it doesn't fit into an exact category, but you get it and you keep moving from there.
Right. Yeah, I did transportation as well, and there's definitely stuff that I had on the test that I have never touched since I got my license. A couple things I might have saw in another report, but that's about it.
That's like school too, right? Some things you
Right.
just never use again.
Right. Yeah, we can talk about that forever. My daughter's in 5th grade, and so she's starting to do hard math, and I'm like, come look at some of my math.
There, exactly.
And she's like, I'm
Exactly.
never going to use this. I'm like, actually, you might. So one of the things that really stood out to me when we met at the NSPE conference was how involved you were with the association, and really you just stood out as a person that I saw in passing the first couple of days because of your interactions with others, and it seemed like you knew a lot of people and you knew things. But as a younger engineer, why is quality control important to you in your career?
Yeah, it's such a good question because I think sometimes as engineers, especially once you come out of school, you don't really know what quality control is. I think when I think back to quality control, I think of the Office and some of the things that took place in that show, with the quality control person and things going wrong. And it's like, okay, I get that, but how does that apply to engineering? Um, but as an engineer, we're called to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And so when you look at that, that quality control is so important because it's making sure that you're doing your job. And as humans, we make mistakes. Let's be real. We all make mistakes. That quality control is in place to make sure that it's not only one set of eyes on things, that multiple people are looking at pieces. Um, as an engineer, you want to be the smartest person in the room, but I think it takes a big person to recognize that you might not be the smartest all the time. And so I think as a young engineer, um, you really have to look at quality control as that piece that you don't know. that you need to learn more about. You need to figure out what all the different aspects of engineering are, and it's really to protect you, it's to protect your company, and to protect the public as a whole. So kind of a broad aspect there, but I mean, it is such a huge piece of what we do in engineering.
Right. And I think embracing it is so important at all levels, but it really
Hmm.
speaks to your reputation. And it's
Yep.
kind of where I think I was going with that, kind of that introducing that question, is that you have a reputation
Hmm.
as a person, as an engineer, as whatever associations and the people that you deal with and interact with. And a lot of it is based on your ability to execute quality control. Because if you have, we all know when you have a bad reputation, it's for a reason. And whether
Yep.
it's true or not, it doesn't matter. It still gets around.
Yep.
So maybe what's your outlook for a young profession on quality control? And any little advice or any thoughts, like you said, coming out of school, but like, how do you
Yeah.
embrace that not knowing, or not knowing what you don't know too?
I think there's two thoughts coming out of school is you have to know that you need it. Um, and but you also struggle with the why is it important aspect. I talked about risk and liability as the big piece. You talked about reputation. We're trying to protect the public, but as a young professional, you have to understand that you have to look at that quality control pieces in order to grow. And it's not just at one point in time. And with both of us being in land development, you have key deadlines, key submissions that take place, right? A lot of times that quality control waits until right before you make that submission. But in all reality, that quality control is all throughout the process of that project. If you're only looking at the end, how much stuff did you miss while things were going on? Are your efficiencies there? There's a lot of different aspects to that. And so I think it's really important to make sure that you're looking at quality control. You have to have the bright side of I can always learn more. I can always grow. And even when you continue to go from a young professional to a seasoned professional, you should still be in the standpoint of I can't do this by myself. I need to make sure someone else is looking at my work.
Right. I don't know how many times that somebody's walked past my desk, and even me with a lot of experience and doing the same thing over and over again, year after year, and they'll walk by and go, "Why don't you move that over here?" And
Mhm.
be like, "Well, that would make this a lot easier and a lot more sense, and it makes the grading easier, the drainage easier, but it just never entered my mind." And that, in a sense, that step, that question that they asked, is quality control.
Yeah, you're right. And as humans, we're creatures of habit, right? We do the same things. We want to say that we're innovative. We're coming up with the new techniques and whatever that might be. But we all revert back to what we know and what we're most comfortable with until we break that barrier. And so it takes another perspective to really look at that and say, hey, if you did it this way, it might actually, well, one, could save the client money, right? During construction. Two, it might be an easier design for us. So, hey, that's even better. Three, it's going to be a benefit, to the public. All those different aspects come into it if we get that second set of eyes on the work that we're doing.
Right. I think quality control is more than just the technical errors, but it's
Hmm.
also asking questions and finding that
Yeah.
best solution, and being able to produce that best product that that bolsters and improves your reputation, both as a company and as an individual. Now we could talk about a little bit about your reputation, because in
Hopefully, it's a good
2021,
one. Hopefully, it's a good one.
seems that way. In 2021, you were selected by the American Society of Civil Engineers Delaware section to be the Young Engineer of the Year. So that is an excellent achievement, and congratulations on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Um, Besides that, it looks like you've also served, or are currently serving, as the
Currently
Delaware
serving.
Engineering Society
Yep.
president, as well as the New Professionals Director on NSPE.
That's correct. Yes.
Um, so you're involved in a lot, and that's what actually stood out to me when I saw you moving and interacting with people at the conference that I was at. I think
Mhm.
you actually moderated even the session that I spoke at. But how has your involvement with those associations, or any association, helped grow your career?
It's an interesting question because it's one of those things where I don't think you typically look at and say, "Hey, I need to be part of this association for my progression and for my growth." And I would challenge that thought of you do need peers outside of your company to really challenge you, to push you forward. Um, as far as NSPE goes, I was at an engineering banquet here in Delaware, and the president said, "Hey, we need volunteers to help out." I was like, "Hey, why not? Why not me?" And then I became vice president, and then he stepped down, and I became president. And it was like, what just happened? And then I got involved with NSPE at the national level through their emerging leaders program that they have. And after that, there was a call for a new professionals director, and I said, yeah, might as well put my name in for that and see what happens. And so I was selected to serve on the board for a 2-year term, and it's been one of those things that's been uh, super impactful in my life because it's not just looking at my company or looking at the people directly in my area. It's looking at the entire country, and you're getting to meet people from all across the U.S. Some that are in similar fields like land development, but others that are just in engineering. And so you develop this camaraderie of people that really you can lean on and grow and develop, and you develop those relationships. Relationships are so important in life. You can't do life alone. You can't. Like you can try and be there by yourself, but you really need those people to be able to lean on, ask questions, and just really push you in the direction that's going to support your growth as a whole.
Well, I think it's great, and I commend you for all that you're involved with. I know I've gotten involved with some of the local organizations that I've seen, the professional organizations like the chambers. So it doesn't necessarily even have to be that national level, but like
No.
getting involved with other businesses and other individuals, it helps you beyond just quality control too, because you have these resources. I'm sure that you have gained engineering resources of people that if you got into a situation that you really just didn't know who to talk to, you probably have somebody in your network that you could call or send an email to and get some positive interactive feedback that would help you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a young professional, you have to know what you don't know, and you have to know when you need to ask questions. And so, in that situation, it's not just knowing that you don't know the answer. It's not just knowing that you need to ask questions. It's knowing who to talk to when you have those questions, and being a part of societies, being part of giving back to the community that's around you, whatever that might be. You're going to find those connections and those relationships that are going to be able to help you in your career.
So I think that's great. And I think it takes some encouragement because that's a big undertaking. And I mean, I'm sure you deal with it. I've dealt with it before, even when I go to events, and it's the imposter syndrome. I don't belong here.
Yeah.
Uh, Even going into a meeting with your supervisor and being like, I can't make this design work. You said it would work. Like, I don't think I'm a good engineer because I can't figure it out. It's
Yeah.
asking those questions and proving one way or the other. Maybe you're doing it wrong, or maybe you're doing it absolutely right and it just doesn't work without changing the confines of what boundaries that you have to work in. I know that I was working on a project and it was a stormwater project, and um, I took it over because the other engineer couldn't solve it. He was having a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
But when I looked at it, I moved a couple of roads, changed a couple lots, and was able to make it work. And they're like, how can you make it work? But he couldn't. I'm like, because he's newer, he
Mhm.
didn't understand that he could move the road or could change the lots or what the impacts are. And as we come at things with different experiences and different uh, things that we do throughout our career, I think it's only best that we do ask questions and learn and try to embrace as much as we possibly can throughout our careers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you brought up the imposter syndrome, and self-esteem and all that stuff. Like that's really big, and part of it is you have to understand. Like, okay, you've gone through 4 years of school to become an engineer. You've gone through what it takes to get your professional engineer's license. You have what it takes. It's not that you can't do; it's that you just don't. have that experience just yet. And so I run into it myself, personally sometimes of do I really belong here? Am I supposed to be am I supposed to be on this podcast? I mean, am I really considered a quality control expert? But it's one of those things, Brian, that if you put yourself down, you can't build yourself up. And so it's like you are where you're supposed to be. You are where you're meant to be, and gleam off of everyone around you to continue to build that knowledge and grow.
I think it's a great perspective. And just to comment on whether or not you belong here on this podcast or not, I learned something from every person that I've talked to. So I even question whether or not I should be hosting
There you
this.
go. Yep,
So,
exactly.
but it's all about helping other engineers, helping others, helping this profession, whether it's a developer listening to this, whether it's
Yep.
a new student that's thinking about engineering and somebody brought up what is quality control and it brought them to this episode, maybe, who knows? The
Oh, I
goal of
appreciate that.
this is to help people, and it doesn't
Exactly.
matter how valuable it is. Like I said, I think I've walked away from every episode of recording these with some kind of takeaway from somebody that just goes, oh, okay, I'm learning, so I'm going to keep doing it because I enjoy learning just as much as anybody else.
You got to be a lifelong learner, right?
So let's transition a little bit and talk about Verdantas. I have some notes here that says it was created as part of a private equity acquisitions, and it used a little bit of a different approach to their quality control procedures. Can you share a little bit more information about that?
Yeah, so Verdantas started in 2020, where they were building a consulting company focused on the environment. And so what happened was a private equity firm came in and acquired a handful of engineering and consulting firms and pulled them together as one company. And so the whole goal there is to be experts in the environment and its supporting infrastructure, and being committed to the people that are in this company. And so when that took place, obviously you got four different companies. A number of companies have all their own processes and procedures and everything else, and you're trying to pull them all together into one. And so it kind of was a cool experience because I would say it's not like other acquisitions that take place where a larger company buys a smaller company. Here it is, go with it. In this case, it really was a collaborative effort between parties of different expertise, different areas of the country that really built together to build a quality control policy and procedure that could be followed across the board, no matter who you were, no matter what you are. Because when it comes down to it, quality control really is a success to the company. And so if we're not following quality, we're not creating a safe work environment for our people. We're not building a great reputation, like you said, Brian, not just externally, but also internally between the different offices across the country, the different areas, the different groups that we have and different practices. Gaining repeat business is all part of that, attracting new clients, and managing business risk. So all of those different aspects pull into the quality. And so what they did was they kind of gathered a group of people together, sat down and said, okay, here's ours. Let's look together, find our similarities, pull them together, and then develop that policy. And it took a little bit of time to pull that all together, but in the end, what's gonna make us successful as a company. So it was one of those, I'll say, backbone pieces that had to be established right off the bat.
Right, I think that's a great approach to a situation like that because, like you said, most acquisitions are this is the big firm, I'm buying the little firm. This is our standards. These are our expectations. Yeah, we might change something or adapt something. And I would actually challenge you to look at all your project managers in your
Mhm.
group, and they probably do things a little bit differently. They
Absolutely.
still apply those project man or the quality control procedures and the policy that you have, but they probably approach it a little bit different, each of them, based on their experiences, their knowledge, their situations that they've been in, and their unique projects. Are you guys leveraging any kind of technology to assist with that?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously over the last 3 years, we've changed a lot, not just with the company, but also um, you know pre-COVID, during COVID, hopefully post-COVID at this point, or whatever you want to call it. But you know, before COVID, I want to say we were still very, I would say, somewhat paper focused. Of the whoever's reviewing the plans, printing them out, marking them up, handing them back to a draft or designer, what that might be. Really got away from that before COVID and transition into the more digital aspect. And so, at this point, we're looking at PDFs, Bluebeam, design review through CAD, that you can kind of just pull things in. Obviously, you talk about quality control being throughout the life cycle of a project, not just the deliverables. So, Microsoft Teams is a big tool that we use. I mean, I absolutely love it. I think a lot of young professionals love using Microsoft Teams, and I think even more experienced professionals are starting to pick up on it. That hey, this can be a really valuable tool. It's helped me limit the amount of email internal that we're having back and forth to really confine it, internal communication to Teams versus email, because we all know that you can never get to inbox zero as much as you would like to. There's always something else that comes up, but always I think you always got to be looking out for the best way to be doing things. Technology is always changing, and so which ways can you make it better? Having Teams calls and going over things while you have people in Delaware, Pennsylvania, Maryland all together on the same call. It kind of makes it a lot easier than what we used to have to go through of conference call, right? And you each had a copy of the plans, and you're going through and saying, do you see this on this page? It's really streamlined that efficiency from a quality control perspective.
I think it's great. I know I've said it on this podcast before, but there are people that struggled with email that are now Teams and Zoom like wizards.
Yep.
That can share their screens and have conversations, and instead of having to rely only on the people in your office or in your situation, in your local area, now you can ask somebody in any office, in any place, if they've had a similar scenario or something to help out. I know that I've had that experience with where we would just have little brainstorm sessions like, hey, let's just have a call. This is my plan. What do you think of this? And then it just works out better because we're sharing more information and not waiting until that 11th hour, the submittals tomorrow situations.
Well, and it's really cool with what we've built as a company in Verdantas here, that we have people out in Ohio, we have people out down in Florida. I physically sit in Delaware. We could all be on the call talking about the same thing, bouncing ideas off each other about our expertise, and really take that interaction to another level where we don't have to be in the same room figuring things out. And hey, it's better for the environment because we're not traveling across, all these different states to get in touch with
and
each
you're
other.
getting all these different perspectives too. I mean, think about like, oh, well, we did this and it was in Ohio and it was stormwater related and it has nothing that you've seen on the East Coast, farther east, I guess, than Ohio. But then it applies and it works and it makes sense and you have an example and you can apply it and keep going. So I think that's just great. So now as a group leader, and you're managing people too, in addition to just your projects, how do you ensure that young professionals are using the correct quality control procedures on their projects?
It's a great question. I mean, that's the whole point of the policy, right? Is making sure that things are put into place the right way. You have different check-ins throughout. The way that we kind of make sure that they're doing the right thing is really kind of come alongside of them, right? You got to check in. It's not a here's the rope, go do what you need to do, coming back when things are done. It's really saddling up alongside of them, and I think that's part of what changes the perspective from a leader to a manager, right? You're not just managing saying, hey, go do this. You're really leading them. You're really kind of coming alongside and say, hey, let's tackle this together. And the more that you're able to show what's going on, what you're doing, what you're seeing, what the process that you're going through, it makes those younger professionals even better in what they do. I had a conversation with someone recently that was like, hey, I'm learning a lot, but I really wish I knew more about the why we're doing what we're doing. And it's like, oh, you're right. If you don't make those connections together, it doesn't stick. And so it's not just about what we're doing, it's why we're doing it, how we're like all those different questions. It all comes together in the perfect picture. And if you can succeed in coming alongside, and I hate saying the word making clones, but you want people to really, you want to send the knowledge down to those younger professionals, because the more that you're able to send it down to them, the more they're able to come up to the next level.
Right. Make their suggestions, make their ideas known too. I mean, it's a two-way street for
And
everything.
I think the other thing is encouraging to ask questions. Um, Actually, let me rephrase that. Encouraging to ask questions and then not being upset when the question is asked. Because I think sometimes we're so busy that we're just like, why are you asking this question? Well, the reason they're asking the question is because they don't know or understand and they want to get a better way. And even if it's something where, hey, I've told them a few times the way to do this. Well, have you told them the right way? Are they listening? Are they understanding? Communication is a two-way street. It's not just the message that you send, but it's also the message that's received. And so all those pieces together, as a young professional, you got to ask the questions when you don't know, and really create that environment that allows for people to ask questions.
I think that's great perspective. And I would encourage anybody to even sometimes I've heard questions asked and I've been asked questions that are more, they're not really questions. They're kind of like check-ins. They're
Yeah.
confirmation. Like
Yep.
you told me to design this like this, and this is what it looks like, because they're not exactly sure what it's supposed to look like.
Hmm.
And then you look at it and go, oh yeah, that's exactly what I expected it to be. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they get a little bit more confidence, a little bit more uh,
Yeah.
experience, and then you just can keep going.
It's that confidence piece that you talk about, right? You're worried going into things of what you're doing, and you might not fully know what it is, and you do that one little thing, you do that one thing right, and it's like, oh, I did it right, and then it's the confidence builder, and it keeps going and going and going. Um, going back to that self-esteem stuff that we talked about earlier, right? The
Mhm.
confidence is a big part of that, and if you can understand how to do things and really reward, provide that feedback of hey, you're doing a great job, it really builds them up and really continues to allow them to grow.
So we have listeners of all ages. So anybody, and we also have the power of experience segment where I'm going to ask you for like a takeaway, but like what suggestions might you have for someone who is considering a career like yours, that is considering getting involved in those associations and putting themselves out there a little bit more? Do you have any suggestions or advice on that?
A short one, but I'll elaborate. Do it. I mean, it's very simple, but I mean, you want to do it. If you're thinking about a career in engineering or a career in, I would say probably one of the coming out of school, not a lot of people understand what land development is in the civil engineering perspective. But if you're considering a platform in civil engineering, do it. Land development, do it. The cool part about land development, like you said earlier, Brian, is that you kind of touch a little bit of everything, right? I feel like as someone that's in the land development field, I can make a lot of impact on the environment around us because of the work that we're doing, and we really make a difference. Yeah, I'm not an environmental engineer, but the environment is important to me, and I want to make sure we're protecting it and doing what needs to get done. So if you're looking for a career in engineering or land development, do it. If you're looking to be a part of an organization, find what's going to fit you best. What are your goals for your career? Where do you want to go? Find where that is and be a part of it. But don't just be a member, be an active member. Get involved, plan events, go to events, meet people, network, build that group around you that you can call on if you got a question about something, or hey, I'm really struggling with this. There's a lot of people out there that can help. LinkedIn is great, but that's only really, it's social media, right? You don't really see a lot of what's going on. You need to find those people in person and really connect with them and grow.
I completely agree, and I appreciate your comments. Uh, I do want to hit the what we call the power of experience segment, uh, where you've been given advice, you've been probably given some tidbits of information over the years, and I'm just
Yeah.
willing if you have anything that you're willing to share with our audience.
I think for me, it's the biggest piece is take advantage of every opportunity that might be given to you. Seek out what might be ahead. Um, Sometimes you might say no because you don't feel like you're qualified, but take the chance if you think you can do it and succeed. If you don't know, ask, but really take advantage of every opportunity that might be presented to you.
I think that's great advice. Um, so as we wrap up, what might be the best way to connect with you?
LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. I'm pretty active on there, posting what I'm doing in the workforce, what our company's doing, or even things that are taking place in the engineering industry as a whole. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think it's K James Taylor. I should have mentioned earlier on, I do not sing and play guitar like the James Taylor, but I do enjoy music. But you can find me K James Taylor on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you and grow that network.
I, I think a lot of your advice, I know we focused on younger professionals and that transitional period and some of that stuff, but really a lot of what you're telling and saying, it should, in my opinion, it should open some eyes of some of those more experienced people to do the same, or just keep that in mind when they're working with those younger professionals.
Yeah, correct. I mean, realistically, quality control doesn't. I would say it doesn't necessarily change in concept, no matter what level you're at. It still needs to be done. You might need to have instruct and teach a young professional really what quality control is all about. How do you make sure that you're impacting quality onto the work that you do? But yes, it does. It stretches the entire gambit of professional.
So, like I said, I want to be courteous of your time as well. I know we're wrapping up the work week when we're recording this, but I do want to thank you again for your time and your insight. I appreciate it. I know our listeners will appreciate it, and you certainly deserve to be on this podcast.
Oh, Brian, I appreciate it. Like I said, it was an honor, and hopefully you'll have me back again sometime in the future.
Please remember that you can find the show notes for this episode and all episodes at engineeringqualitycontrol.com. There you'll find a summary of the key points that we discussed, along with links to any of the resources, websites, and other things that we mentioned in today's episode. Until next time, friends, I wish you the best in your engineering endeavors.